The quantum detection grid lit up like a Christmas tree across Dr. Elena Rodriguez's holographic display. She blinked twice, making sure her eyes weren't playing tricks on her after 18 straight hours in the Lunar Observatory's detection chamber. But the readings remained steady. A massive object had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Central Command, this is Lunar Observatory Delta. We have confirmation of an artificial construct entering the system. Mass estimate suggests it's roughly the size of Manhattan. Elena's voice remained steady despite her racing heart. This was it. Humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. The response from Earth came almost immediately. Acknowledge Delta. Keep monitoring. First contact protocols are now in effect. Within hours, every major telescope in the solar system was trained on the approaching vessel. Its hull seemed to shimmer with an iridescent quality that defied conventional material science, and its movement through space appeared to bend the very starlight around it. Admiral James Chen stood on the bridge of the EDS Endeavour, Earth's flagship, and the pride of the newly formed defense fleet. The ship represented humanity's best achievements: quantum computers, antimatter containment systems, and theoretical physics turned into engineering reality. Yet compared to the alien vessel now hanging in high Earth orbit, the Endeavour felt like a wooden canoe next to a nuclear submarine. They're broadcasting, Lieutenant Sarah Williams announced from her communications station. It's being transmitted on all frequencies, and somehow the signal is self-translating into every known human language simultaneously. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing beings that seemed to be composed of crystalline structures and flowing energy. Their forms shifted and realigned constantly, like living kaleidoscopes. The one in the center, larger than the others, spoke first. "We are the Valaxians," the being announced, its voice somehow conveying both musical harmony and cold disdain. "Your primitive electromagnetic emissions have been polluting this sector for decades. We have come to evaluate your species." Admiral Chen squared his shoulders. "On behalf of Earth and humanity, we welcome you. We hope this meeting can lead to peaceful exchange and mutual understanding." The crystalline being emitted a sound like wind chimes in a storm, apparently their version of laughter. "Exchange. Understanding. Your species barely comprehends four-dimensional spacetime. Your fastest ships crawl through space like insects. What could you possibly offer beings who have mastered the manipulation of 11 dimensions?" For the next 3 hours, the Valaxians systematically dismantled every human achievement presented to them. They dismissed Earth's quantum technology as quaint approximations of basic universal principles. They called human art the equivalent of cave paintings made with digital tools. Every attempt at scientific discourse was met with patronizing explanations of how wrong humanity's basic understanding of physics was. But in the background, something else was happening. Dr. Rodriguez, watching from her lunar station, noticed something odd about the Valaxian ship's quantum signature. There were patterns in the higher dimensional frequencies that the aliens seemed to be completely ignoring. She began recording everything, her mind racing with possibilities. The Valaxians concluded their evaluation with an announcement. Earth would be placed under their protection and restriction. No human ships would be allowed to travel beyond Mars without Valaxian supervision. All technological development would need to be approved by Galaxian overseers. It was for humanity's own good, they claimed, to prevent them from accidentally destroying themselves with half-understood principles of physics. Admiral Chen managed to maintain his diplomatic composure, but his hands were clenched tight behind his back. "We will need time to discuss these terms with Earth's governing council." Discuss. The Valaxian leader's form rippled with those chiming tones again. "Oh, you misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. We will begin installing our monitoring stations immediately. Resist, and we will simply disable all of your technology. It would take less effort than you expend in breathing." As the transmission ended, Shen immediately opened a secure quantum channel to Lunar Observatory Delta. "Dr. Rodriguez, please tell me you got all that." "Every quantum fluctuation, Admiral. And there's something else. Something huge. But I can't discuss it over any channel. Request immediate clearance to return to Earth. This changes everything we thought we knew about dimensional physics. Chen looked out at the massive Valaxian ship, its hull still shimmering with impossible energies. Granted. Whatever you found, Doctor, I hope it's good news. Because right now, humanity could use a miracle. In her observatory, Elena was already packing her quantum datasets, her hands trembling with excitement rather than fear. The Valaxians, for all their supposed superiority, had just revealed their greatest weakness. In their arrogance, they had never considered that their blind spots might contain exactly what humanity needed to change the rules of the game. Deep beneath the Atacama Desert, in a facility that didn't officially exist, the quantum computers were already processing the data she was sending. Project Infinity, a theoretical research program into seven-dimensional space-time manipulation, was about to become something far more practical. The Valaxians thought they had come to put humanity in its place. Instead, they had unknowingly handed humans the keys to dimensions they had never even thought to explore. As Elena prepared for her return to Earth, she allowed herself a small smile. The aliens had made one crucial mistake. They had assumed that humanity's greatest strength was in its technology. They were about to learn that human ingenuity, sparked by necessity and fueled by defiance, was far more dangerous than any weapon they could imagine. High above, the Valaxian ship began deploying its monitoring platforms, its crew completely unaware that their moment of triumph was actually the beginning of their greatest miscalculation. Humanity had been contained, they thought. In reality, they had just created the perfect conditions for a quantum revolution that would rewrite the laws of what was possible. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. 3 kilometers beneath the Chilean desert, where even the Valaxian quantum scanners couldn't penetrate, Project Infinity had transformed from a theoretical research initiative into humanity's greatest hope. The facility sprawled through massive caverns carved by experimental quantum tunneling devices, its walls lined with crystalline matrices that absorbed any detectable energy signatures. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a holographic representation of seven-dimensional spacetime, her eyes tracking patterns that would have appeared as meaningless chaos to anyone else. 6 months had passed since first contact, and the Valaxians had kept their word. Their monitoring stations now orbited every major planet, and their supervisors regularly inspected human technological developments with patronizing thoroughness. "The simulations are ready," announced Dr. Kaijong, Elena's chief theoretical physicist. His hands danced through the holographic interface, bringing up complex mathematical models. "We've confirmed what you discovered in their blind spot. The Valaxians are so focused on brute force manipulation of dimensions 1 through 11, they've never explored the subtle resonances in dimensions 12 through 15. Elena nodded, watching as the simulation demonstrated their breakthrough. "They're like someone who's mastered sledgehammers, but never conceived of lockpicks. They don't just ignore these dimensions, they can't even perceive them." The prototype sat in the chamber behind them, the culmination of 6 months of desperate work. Unlike the massive Valaxian ships with their ostentatious displays of power, the human vessel was surprisingly small, barely larger than a traditional submarine. Its hull was covered in fractal patterns that seemed to hurt the eyes if observed too long, a side effect of its seven-dimensional properties. Director Rodriguez, a young technician, burst into the room, face flushed with urgency. "The Valaxian inspectors. They're demanding access to the upper levels of the facility. They say their scanners detected unusual power fluctuations." Elena exchanged glances with Kai. They had known this day would come eventually. "Initiate Protocol Omega, and get me a secure line to Admiral Chen." Across the facility, hidden mechanisms whirred to life. The upper 3 levels of the facility, which had been maintained as a convincing decoy, began showing exactly the kind of activity their Valaxian overseers would expect from a primitive human research station. Meanwhile, deeper below, the real work continued. Admiral Chen's face appeared on a secure quantum channel that operated on principles the Valaxians had dismissed as irrelevant. "How close are you?" he asked without preamble. "The prototype is ready for its first full test," Elena replied. "But we'll need a diversion. A big one." Chen's expression was grim but determined, already in motion. The Chinese space fleet is about to have an accidental antimatter containment failure near their lunar base. Nothing dangerous, but it should keep our overlords busy for about 6 hours. Commander Sarah Martinez navigated the shadow of dawn through dimensions that defied conventional physics. After 3 months of successful test flights, moving through 7-dimensional space had become almost natural. Almost. The ship's quantum sensors suddenly pinged, detecting something massive at the edges of known space. "Control, are you seeing this?" Sarah's voice carried through channels that existed between traditional subspace frequencies. In the Project Infinity control room, Elena and her team were already analyzing the readings. "Confirmed, Shadow. We're detecting some kind of quantum architecture. Ancient. The energy patterns suggest it's been dormant for millions of years." Elena's fingers flew across her holographic interface. "Can you get closer?" The shadow of dawn slipped through higher dimensions, approaching the mysterious structure. It was vast, far larger than even the Valaxian ships, and seemed to pulse with a deep, otherworldly energy that resonated across multiple dimensional planes. "Director Rodriguez." Kai burst into the control room, his face pale. "The long-range quantum arrays just picked up something. Thousands of similar structures are activating throughout the galaxy. They're moving." The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. The mysterious signals they detected weren't just random quantum fluctuations. They were a wake-up call. Something ancient was stirring, something that even the mighty Valaxians, for all their technological superiority, hadn't noticed. Above Earth, the Valaxian monitoring stations continued their regular patrols, completely blind to both the human ship and the cosmic alarm that was now ringing across higher dimensions. Their arrogance had become their weakness. They were so convinced of their mastery over space-time that they never bothered to look beyond their understanding. Admiral Chen was briefed immediately. "How much time do we have?" "Based on their movement patterns, 3 months at most before they reach populated space," Elena reported. "The Valaxians can't detect them. These entities exist primarily in the dimensional frequencies that the Valaxians ignore, and we can't warn them without revealing our own breakthrough." Chen's face was grim. "How many ships can we have ready in 3 months?" Elena brought up the production schedules. Secret facilities around the world had been working around the clock, building vessels that incorporated the 7-dimensional technology. 5, maybe 6 if we push the safety margins. The Shadow of Dawn has proven the concept works, but scaling up has been challenging. It will have to be enough. Chen's expression hardened. Because if these ancient entities are hostile, we're not just fighting for human independence anymore. We might be fighting for the survival of every species in the galaxy, including the Valaxians. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Deep beneath the Earth's surface, humanity raced against time. The new ships took shape in hidden chambers, each one larger than the Shadow of Dawn, designed not just for exploration, but for combat in dimensions that most species couldn't even perceive. The flagship of the small fleet was christened the Defiance, a name that carried multiple meanings. Its hull incorporated everything they'd learned from the Shadow of Dawn's test flights, with additional systems that even Elena had initially thought impossible. Commander Martinez was promoted to captain and given command of the Defiance. Her experience navigating 7-dimensional space made her the natural choice to lead humanity's first dimensional warfare vessel. "The entities are accelerating," Kai reported during one of their daily briefings. "Their power signatures are off the charts. Whatever they are, they're operating on technological principles that make even the Valaxians look primitive." Elena studied the data with growing concern. The ancient machines showed signs of intelligence, purpose, and devastating power. Their movement patterns suggested they were herding something, or hunting it. Captain Martinez, Elena contacted the Defiance, which was completing its final trials in a pocket of 7-dimensional space. How quickly can your crew be ready for a long-range mission? We're ready now, Director, Sarah responded without hesitation. The crew has been training in shifts. We can deploy as soon as you give the word. Elena took a deep breath. They had hoped to have more time, to build more ships, to better understand what they were facing. But time had run out. Prepare for immediate deployment. We need to understand what these things are and what they want before they reach populated space. Captain Sarah Martinez stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching as the ancient entities emerged from the darkness between stars. In conventional space, they appeared as massive crystalline structures, each one larger than a small moon. But through the ship's 7-dimensional sensors, their true nature became apparent. They were living mathematics, beings of pure quantum architecture that existed simultaneously across multiple dimensional planes. Multiple contacts, Lieutenant Park announced from his sensor station. They're herding something. A whole civilization's worth of ships running from them. The fleeing ships were unlike anything they'd seen before. Not Valaxian, not human, but something else entirely. And they were being systematically driven toward populated space like cattle to slaughter. Director Rodriguez, are you seeing this? Sarah's voice carried across their secure dimensional channel. In the Project Infinity control room, Elena and her team were analyzing the data streams. Confirmed, Captain. Those ships appear to be from the Meridian Empire, a species the Valaxians mentioned in passing. They exist on the far side of the galaxy. They're being hunted, Sarah observed grimly. These ancient entities are driving them straight toward Valaxian space, using them as bait. The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. These weren't mindless machines awakening from dormancy. They were hunters, and they'd been orchestrating this chase for months, staying just outside conventional detection range. Multiple dimensional ruptures detected. Park's voice rose with urgency. The entities they're pulling ships out of normal space, somehow feeding off their energy. Sarah watched in horror as one of the Meridian ships was yanked into higher dimensions, its energy being systematically drained by the ancient hunters. The Valaxian monitoring stations in nearby systems remained oblivious, their sophisticated sensors blind to the dimensional frequencies where this slaughter was taking place. We can't wait any longer, Sarah decided. All ships, Battle Formation Delta. Prepare for dimensional warfare protocols. The small human fleet, 6 ships including the Defiance, moved into position. They had trained for this, but training couldn't fully prepare them for combat in 7 dimensions. Remember, Sarah broadcast to her fleet, we're not trying to match their power. We're fighting smart. Use their blind spots. Dance between their attacks. We're humanity's best hope. And now we're the galaxy's best hope too. The battle that followed defied conventional physics. The ancient entities attacked with weapons that existed in dimensions 8 through 11. Devastating attacks that would have annihilated normal ships. But the human vessels slipped between the dimensional layers, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Target their quantum architecture. Elena's voice came through with strategic analysis. Their power distribution suggests a crystalline lattice structure. Find the resonance points. The Defiance dove through a gap in dimensional space that the entities couldn't even perceive, emerging behind one of the massive hunters. Its weapons, designed based on the quantum principles that the Valaxians had dismissed as primitive, struck at precisely calculated points in the entity's structure. The effect was devastating. The ancient hunter's quantum architecture began to collapse, its energy dispersing across multiple dimensions. The other entities immediately turned their attention to this new threat, finally registering the presence of ships that could hurt them. They're adapting, Park warned. Multiple dimensional attacks incoming. Scatter pattern Omega, Sarah ordered. Her fleet split apart, each ship sliding into different dimensional frequencies, making it impossible for the entities to target them all at once. The battle raged across space that existed between spaces. Human ingenuity faced off against ancient power, with the fate of multiple civilizations hanging in the balance. The Defiance's crew fought with everything they had, using their understanding of dimensional physics in ways that would have seemed impossible just months ago. But the ancient entities were powerful, and despite humanity's clever tactics, the battle began to turn. 2 human ships were lost, their dimensional drives overloaded by the entities' attacks. The remaining fleet regrouped around the Defiance, preparing for what might be their final stand. "There's a pattern to their attacks," Alina's voice cut through the chaos. "They're not just hunting. They're harvesting specific quantum frequencies. If we can disrupt those frequencies..." Sarah understood immediately. "All ships, reconfigure your dimensional drives to broadcast on the harvesting frequencies." Full power. The human ships began radiating energy on precisely the frequencies that the ancient entities were trying to harvest, but with a crucial difference. The energy was modulated in ways that created destructive interference patterns across multiple dimensions. The effect was like throwing sand into perfectly calibrated machinery. The ancient hunters' quantum architecture began to destabilize, their carefully maintained dimensional structures collapsing under the assault. "It's working," Park exclaimed. "Their energy signatures are..." "Wait." He paused, staring at his readings in disbelief. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL. Valaxian signatures. The Valaxian patrol fleet had finally arrived, drawn by the massive energy discharges that even their limited sensors could detect. They emerged from faster-than-light travel to find an impossible scene. Human ships that shouldn't exist, dancing through dimensions they couldn't access, fighting creatures of nightmare that their sensors could barely detect. "This is High Commander Zextal of the Valaxian Defense Force." A familiar crystalline voice broadcast across all frequencies. "What is the meaning of this violation of our protocols?" Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, one of the ancient entities turned its attention to the Valaxian fleet. Its attack cut through their supposedly superior defenses, like they weren't even there, tearing 2 ships apart instantly. The battle was about to enter a new phase, and humanity's secret was now exposed. But as Sarah watched the Valaxian ships struggling against an enemy they could barely comprehend, she knew that old rivalries would have to wait. The real war was just beginning, and the galaxy's best hope lay not in the Valaxians' brute force technology, but in humanity's ability to dance between the dimensions themselves. The space around the battle zone rippled with dimensional energies as human ships and ancient entities danced their lethal ballet. The Valaxian fleet hung back, their mighty vessels suddenly seeming fragile in the face of enemies they could barely detect. High Commander Zextal's voice had lost its usual condescension, replaced by something approaching desperation. "How are you doing this? Those dimensional frequencies should be impossible to access with your level of technology." "Funny thing about impossible," Captain Sarah Martinez responded, the Defiance sliding between dimensional layers to avoid another entity's attack. "Humans tend to take it as a challenge." Alina's voice cut through the tactical channel. "Captain, the entities are changing their pattern. They're merging." The remaining ancient hunters began to flow together, their quantum architectures interweaving into something even more terrifying. The combined entity towered through multiple dimensions, its power signature exceeding anything their sensors could properly measure. "All ships, fall back to defensive positions," Sarah ordered. "Dr. Rodriguez, please tell me you have an idea." In the Project Infinity control room, Alina and her team were working frantically. The data streams from the battle had revealed something crucial about the entity's nature. "They're not just hunters," she realized. "They're harvesters. They'd been gathering specific quantum frequencies because they're building something. The merge isn't just about power, it's about completion." The massive combined entity began to pulse with energies that distorted spacetime itself. Even the Valaxian ships were forced to retreat further, their advanced shields crumbling under dimensional stresses they were never designed to handle. "High Commander," Sarah broadcast to the Valaxian fleet, I'm sending you quantum frequency data. Your weapons are powerful enough to harm them, but you're firing in the wrong dimensional bands. If you adjust to these specifications, there was a moment of tense silence. The Valaxians had spent months treating humans as barely evolved primates. Now they were being offered help by the very species they had sought to contain. This is impossible, Zextal responded. These calibrations violate fundamental laws of physics. No, Elena cut in, patching into the communication. They violate your understanding of those laws. There's a difference. Another Valaxian ship disappeared in a burst of multidimensional energy, and Zextal made his decision. Transmit your specifications. All ships, recalibrate weapons accordingly. The combined entity had nearly finished its transformation. Its new form stretched across dimensions 12 through 15, drawing power from quantum frequencies that even Elena's team hadn't fully mapped. But in its moment of transformation, it had revealed its true purpose. It's a key, Elena exclaimed. The entities, they're not just hunters. They're trying to open something, a dimensional portal of some kind. The Meridian ships, Sarah realized. They weren't just prey. They're energy signatures. They were the final components needed for whatever the entities are trying to unlock. Space itself began to tear apart as the combined entity exerted its full power. Beyond the dimensional rift, something vast and dark began to stir, something that had been waiting for millions of years to be awakened. If that portal fully opens, we lose everything, Elena warned. Not just our galaxy, all of them. Every dimension we can detect shows the same pattern of total entropy beyond that threshold. Sarah looked at her tactical display. The human fleet was down to 4 ships. The Valaxians had lost nearly half their force. But now they had something they didn't have before. Coordination, understanding, and just maybe enough firepower to make a difference. All ships, form up on the Defiance, she ordered. Valaxian fleet, take position in these coordinates. We're going to show these entities why picking on primitive species was their last mistake. What followed was something unprecedented in galactic history. Human and Valaxian ships moving in perfect synchronization, their weapons complementing each other across dimensional barriers that shouldn't have been crossable. The human vessels danced through 7-dimensional space, creating weak points in the entity's quantum architecture that the Valaxians' enormous power could then exploit. The portal is destabilizing, Elena reported. But the entity is drawing power directly from the void now. We need something more. Sarah studied the tactical display, an impossible idea forming. The shadow of dawn, she said. Its dimensional drive, it was the prototype. Not as stable as the newer models, but it could be overloaded, Elena finished, creating a cascading dimensional collapse that would shatter their quantum architecture at its foundation. Sarah's voice was firm. Send me the calculations. Sarah, no, Elena protested. The shadow is too small to deliver that kind of payload. It would need a larger vessel to generate enough power. It would need the Defiance. Sarah looked around her bridge, seeing the understanding in her crew's eyes. They had all signed up knowing the risks. Begin evacuation protocols. All hands to emergency dimensional pods. The next few minutes were organized chaos as the Defiance's crew transferred to other ships through specially designed dimensional corridors. Sarah remained at her post, making the final modifications to her ship's drive systems. It has been. High Commander Zextal's voice carried unexpected respect. An honor to witness true innovation, Captain Martins. Perhaps we were wrong about humanity's potential. Save it for after we win, Sarah replied. All ships clear the blast radius. Dimensional drive engaging in 3, 2, 1. The Defiance's 7-dimensional drive began to overload, its energy patterns creating a web of destructive resonance that tore through the combined entity's quantum structure. The ancient hunter tried to adapt, to absorb this new energy, but the frequencies were too chaotic, too destructive to contain. The dimensional portal began to collapse, the void beyond it shrieking in frequencies that existed beyond normal spacetime. The combined entity's form started to fracture, its carefully constructed quantum architecture falling apart under the strain. In the end, it wasn't just raw power that won the day. It was human ingenuity combined with Valaxian strength, precision working with force, creating something greater than either civilization could have achieved alone. The Defiance disappeared in a burst of seven-dimensional energy that rippled across multiple planes of existence. When the quantum distortions cleared, the ancient entity was gone. The portal had collapsed. The galaxy, all galaxies, were safe. In the aftermath, as rescue ships collected emergency pods and damage reports were tallied, the Valaxian High Commander made an unprecedented journey to the Project Infinity facility. The Lena met him in the main control room, where just months ago they had been hiding their work from Valaxian inspectors. "We had thought," Zextal said, his crystalline form shifting with what might have been embarrassment, "that our understanding of the universe was complete. That our role was to prevent lesser species from harming themselves with forces they couldn't comprehend. The universe," Elena replied, "has a way of humbling those who think they've learned all its secrets." Indeed. The High Commander's form pulsed with newfound respect. The Valaxian Oversight Protocol is hereby dissolved. In its place, we would propose an alliance. There are clearly forces in this galaxy that require a more diverse approach to understanding and confronting them.